Okay, so with all of us here, I'd like to welcome all of you today to this Coming Home conversation, part of the series of the Coming Home series, and where I'll be interviewing Monica Laurence and with Isobel McKenna and Corry Angwar as our studio guests. So welcome all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say how wonderful it is to be having these conversations. And thank you for joining, because at this stage, these conversations are really amongst women that I know on some level quite intimately. And so it means that most of the women that arrive here are women that really are special to me. And interestingly, sometimes it might even be a woman that I've only met in the last week or two that I know immediately that is someone that I share a deep connection with. But in this case, I have a fairly long-standing relationship, depends what you call long nowadays, but more than a few weeks with each of you. And so thank you as I enter into this new venture of these Coming Home conversations. Just to talk about the broader topic of these conversations, which is ordinary women, extraordinary lives, and which is essentially why I created these conversations. And really to speak to the fact that most of us, certainly the women participating in these conversations, are extraordinary women. Who in many cases, and what I mean by ordinary lives is that we're not perhaps in the headlights up in Times Square or whatever the case is, but that we are women essentially who are courageous, who live with open hearts, and who are looking to make an impact in the world. And so part of the reason I created this is to have a platform where we build confidence in coming together and having conversations across the globe, creating connectivity, creating new community through conversation and connection. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the poem. It's a poem called Homecoming. Actually, a dear friend of mine, and I know of Corry as well, called Mary Walker. She's also from the Southern Hemisphere. And before I actually move into the poem, well, one of the things that struck me in this conversation today is that all of us here are based in the Southern Hemisphere at the moment.
Oh, true.
And it's actually the first time I'm conducting one of these conversations where I'm inviting in women from the Australasia region. And so I think it's beautiful and very apt that also we are moving on Monday into, and it's wonderful to call it our winter solstice, because so often we are in some ways led by the north, and we hear people referring more to it as the summer solstice, which of course is what the people in the northern hemisphere are experiencing. And so I think that's a beautiful thread that ties us together as we move into this solstice on Monday, which gives us time to pause and perhaps reflect as we move into the second half of this year of 2021. And I think this conversation is great to lead us into that. So, homecoming. Just relax and listen as you wish. You're welcome to close your eyes if you'd like to, and I'll go ahead and read the poem. After a long time unmoored, living alongside rather than in yourself, on seeing this and feeling suddenly homesick for something you didn't know existed. Peace. You might long to rush at yourself, dive headlong into the safety of home, and wonder why you keep missing. wonder why you and your life keep floating away from each other. Knowing that the anchor was thrown too far from the boat all that time ago. Reunion can't come soon enough. Still, it takes time to reacquaint. Time to trust the tide that was always trying to take you home, and that will pick you up and return you yet. I'm sure everyone appreciated that poem that ties beautifully into our theme today. And with that, I'm going to move into saying a little bit about Corry and Isobel and my connection to you, and then asking each of you with a couple of questions to introduce yourselves a bit more. So I'll start with Corry. Corry and I go back 3 or 4 years, where we first met on a writing program through Martha Beck, who, when we moved, when Donald Trump was first being instated as president, felt in the moment of urgency that she needed to do something. And being a writer, she started a writing group called Write into Light. And that is where Corry and I met, together with other amazingly wonderful women. And we have since then established a deeper connection. A couple of years ago, at the time that I went to Peru, traveled to Peru, Corry and I think, first deepened our connection, where I established Corry had also been, and we share the love for that country and that culture. And since then, Corry has actually passed through South Africa when she attended a retreat at Skakuza, one of the game reserves here, a couple of years ago. So we've actually met in person as well. And then Isobel, I know through a group that I created at the time that lockdown started here in South Africa. So Isobel's based in South Africa as well, where I put out a call, a carrion call in a way, to create a group for weekly conversations where we could center ourselves and just find a space to hold ourselves. Also an international group, where we still meet once a month. And Isobel has been amazing. She's incredibly intrepid in taking on any challenge that comes her way, always game for fun and a new adventure, and in championing the cause of furthering conversations as well. So welcome, Corry and Isobel. Welcome today. And with that, Corry, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself by way of giving us an idea of where in the world you are and something about yourself that might be interesting for us to know.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Guiomar, Monica, and Isobel. I live in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm an artist and poet. Yeah, I'm not sure what's interesting. I'm currently actually training for meditation, a movement meditation facilitator program, and it's called Kindred Meditation. So yeah, it has been a very long journey for me to come to this place where I sort of decide to teach something because I for a very long time I identify myself as like a shy, introverted person who, is not really, never think about like teaching anything in front of other people. So just been going through a lot of journey of growth, and especially during the pandemic time, it's just massive. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Corry, and thank you for one of the things that I didn't mention earlier was really thank you, all of you, for the courage to show up here. It's not a space that many women would necessarily feel comfortable joining, where they're meeting with people that they've never met before, and it's a very courageous thing, and thank you for being here. Isobel.
So my name is Isobel. I live in South Africa at the moment, but I'm not South African. I grew up in England, lived in Germany, grew up in Germany, and then lived in other countries as well. And over the years, then managed to come to South Africa. Love South Africa. It's a beautiful country. It has its challenges, but it's a beautiful spot on the earth. Yeah, I've lived in quite a few countries, and there's definitely something special about South Africa. I'm not saying it's my final destination, but I'm enjoying being here at the moment. Yeah, and I have two beautiful daughters. One is at university in Cape Town. The other one has graduated university in Canada and is living in Canada now with a partner. And I've got a dog staring at me through the window, completely puzzled that she's not being let into the room, but I've locked the doors so that I can enjoy the conversations with everybody this morning South Africa time. Looking forward to meeting everybody.
Well, good morning, Isobel, our very international guest today, who's lived in so many countries. And of course, it's morning for us, and for Monica and Corry, it's evening. So that's super exciting. They're ahead of us, and that's super exciting in itself to be able to connect in different time zones at different times. So thank you. Yeah, welcome, Corry and Isobel. And I'll give a short introduction now of our guest today, Monica. My experience of her, what I know of her, and why she's here as our interviewee this morning or this evening. So welcome, Monica. Monica and I met, I say, not in physical person or not even in a conversation, but through also some studies that we did some years ago, where we both established that while we never spoke at the time, that we had some resonance. There were a fair number of people on this program, and we both recently established that our names stood out for each other. And certainly, Monica, your name has a certain power and resonance and harmony to it for me. So it's always drawn me. Monica is at the moment living in Fiji, but she'll let us know more about her as we enter into the conversation. I don't want to give too much away. So Corry and Isobel, I'm going to ask if you could switch off your videos and mute, and then I'll be inviting you back shortly after we've spoken a bit with Monica. So yeah, hi Monica. And thank you for agreeing to be interviewed today. And I'd really love for you to give us a little bit of introduction, perhaps starting geographically as to your background, because to be honest, I don't even really know geographically, apart from where you are now and that you come from the US, what your history is in terms of where you call home, which is what our conversation is about today.
Well, home is such a beautiful question, one that I played with for quite a while. During this global pandemic, home has been Fiji. About 3 years ago now, I purchased a boutique resort here in Fiji. I had been going back and forth between California and the Fiji Islands. And I was noticing that the energy in the islands, the way of being present here, the way of living life joyfully was kind of providing creative spark for me. And I'm a serial entrepreneur in technology and entertainment. And I was bringing a lot of the energy from the islands back to California with me. And I was noticing that what I was working on was becoming more impactful, more expansive. And I thought, wouldn't it be lovely if more people who are imagining a more beautiful world could spend some time in Fiji and could really come home and be a part of the culture here. So that was the impetus for me buying this boutique resort. And it's been a crazy ride over the last 15 months. Our borders closed in March of 2020. And so I've had no guests. And that's also been a time of solitude and reflection and growth, most definitely. There's nothing easy about what all of us have been experiencing, but clearly there are so many gifts that are all, let's put it this way, coming home. So I can say that for me, my experience over these past year plus has, I feel more complete, more whole than I did before the pandemic started. And for me, those feelings, Guiomar, that's what makes you feel like you're at home, you know, when you're complete, you're whole, you're at peace, you're inspired, you're at rest, and you're connected with yourself and with everyone around you.
Monica, you've shared some of this part of the journey with me around you being in Fiji the last 2 or 3 years, which has been probably a lifetime in itself, I imagine. From what I've understood of your story, it's taken you through an enormous trajectory in terms of your own development, in terms of finding what this thing home is. And I'm curious about how it was in a way to be uprooted, because I don't know from what I've understood that you necessarily intended for Fiji to become home, and I'm not sure for how long it will be home, but perhaps you'd like to share a little bit around that.
Well, I think in many ways I was quite naive, to tell you the truth. And as an entrepreneur, I find that happens almost routinely, that I have this idea, I'm intent on bringing the idea to life, and then I make the leap and I say, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding. This is what I've decided to do. And then I'm so far along into it that there's no turning back. That was certainly the case with this venture here. When I purchased this property, it was already a going concern, as they say. Had wonderful staff that was running the property. And I thought I was coming for 4 months to make some repairs, really repairs of an aesthetic nature, and then train the staff for a more luxurious experience. And then I'd be back to my life and my work in California. And this is not what happened. You know, I got here and it was just this onslaught of kind of shocking discoveries. I would wake up in the morning and there was no water. And so I'd say, well, why don't we have any water? Oh, that happens sometimes, you know, no water. It's like, oh, that's gonna have to be fixed, you know? And that was just the beginning. Yeah, there was the decks were rotting, the appliances were dying, the generator didn't work, and it was just on and on and on. I remember after being here for about a month and a half, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like actually vibrating, and I thought, oh my gosh, you've really done it this time, haven't you? This is not a dream. You know, this is your reality. At the same time, Guiomar, I think that it was so good for me, because most choices we make in life, you can back out of them, you can modify them in some way, they can be undone. There's not a lot of decisions that we make that are so permanent. But this was not a choice that could easily be undone. And I had to step into a different version of myself. I had to become very, very clear about the choices I was making for my energy, for my focus. It also became very clear to me that people would come and go and that they would have ideas and advice, but at the end of the day, the only person who would still be standing here, if she were standing at all, would be me. And so that I had to fully own all of those choices. And that might sound obvious, but coming from an environment in which you're working in teams, and for me, coming from an environment in which I had raised 3 children, so much decision making is about creating harmony and an environment in which a group can thrive. And so I'm quite good at those skills. But what was required from me here was not those skills. It required a certain resoluteness of self. And that was really the beginning of me having to step into a new form of mastery. I will say at the same time, I was incredibly blessed because so many beautiful people came to help. You know, the kind of people that are just fun, that, you know, come to help out and then turn on the tunes and dance like crazy and throw something together to eat and, you know, pour a glass of wine and really enjoy each other's company. The kind of people who could celebrate while still contributing, you know, to the work that needed to be done here. So a real sense of camaraderie began to emerge, and that really became part of the team here. The entire team here is very close, because basically we roll up our sleeves and we do it together. And so often we don't know how to do everything. So we're like, all right, well, YouTube has always been our best friend. So let's figure out how do we clear out the pool system by turning on a YouTube video and then experimenting.
Amazing, amazing. Monica, there's so much depth and value in what you have to say, and from other conversations that we've had, there's so much that you have to offer for the world to learn about, really. And right at this moment, what's coming to mind really is what you said about having the courage to just take the plunge, which it seems that you've done many, many times, but this one seems to have been that big plunge, the one, as you said, where there is no turning back, that you now live by your decision to take that plunge. And how does this aspect of life, of this attitude of taking the plunge, tie into, for you, this thing of discovering where home is and what home is?
You know, for years I identified home as where I lived, and I adore a place that has beautiful interior design. I even took interior design classes. That it surrounds you with color and a vibe and feelings, you know, a place that evokes emotion. And that's really what's important to me, is that when I am in a space, it feels welcoming, not just to me, but to others who arrive. I like that kind of eclectic mix of, you know, very casual, but also sophisticated. And I like for when people walk into a space that they feel a sense of change in their breathing and how they're holding their bodies. They feel a sense of ease and release and connection with others. So for me, that's what I'm trying to cultivate. I suppose at this point, it's almost like naturally what I cultivate, you know, here at the hotel or other places that I go. But home is not always a place, you know. Home is a feeling inside of the heart. And it can be a longing, for people you love who you're not with, people who used to be here who aren't here any longer. It's almost like all these little moments of love imprint themselves on our hearts. And when we want to be at home, it's being connected to our own heart that gives us that sense of, oh, yeah, I'm home now.
And Monica, what I love is the way you integrate, or you speak of integrating all the various senses, the textures, the beauty that you were talking about. You'd gone into decor and that sort of thing. It was interesting to me as well to hear in your introduction that you're not just on the IT side, that you're also in the space of creating, I can't remember how you put it, but in the space very much of beauty and creativity, and that's part of your being. But I love that you bring in the idea that perhaps home is, and this is what I'm hearing from you, you can, anywhere you are, you can actually turn into home if you tune in to what's around you, to those textures, to the colors, to the sensations, to wherever it might be. And I find that quite extraordinary, and the fact that you've achieved almost a certain level of mastery around that most of us are aspiring to.
That's sweet of you to say. About 10 years ago, I decided to give myself a bit of a challenge. And I decided to just let home find me. And I imagined myself as a turtle. And because a turtle is always at home, you know, a turtle carries its home on its back. So I traveled quite a bit, and I just felt into each environment. What was it about that particular environment that felt like home? Or were there aspects of each of those environments that I wanted to take with me so that they would be with me the next time I was in home? So I played with the idea for a little while. I will say, I think it's going to be quite a shock for me when I finally do leave Fiji. And goodness, I'm going to get emotional about that. How funny is that? I wasn't expecting to be here so long. I wasn't expecting that when I bought the business, and I certainly wasn't expecting it when our borders closed. And this is a family business, so it's not just me who's a part of this business, it's also my children. But they had left for a break prior to the borders closing and have never been able to return. And so that at times has produced a real sense of isolation and also fear for me, because I did go through a Category 5 cyclone here back in December. And I was never expecting to face one of those alone, you know? So it's definitely such a spectacular set of experiences just over the course of the last year. So much so that I know when I do finally return to the US from the islands, it's going to be difficult to tear my heart away.
And of
It's been
course,
very
Monica, I know that it has, your heart has gone through a lot in the time that you've been there. So it's not always easy. As you say, there are times of feeling alone as you take on a trajectory like that. There are losses that you experience as well as gains. And how does that tie into this journey? How can you perhaps relate this as we kind of wrap up the conversation between the two of us, perhaps how can you relate this perhaps to the expression of leading each other home? If that's not throwing a bit too much of a...
No, I absolutely, Guiomar, thank you. I've had quite a bit of loss since I arrived. I don't know that I experienced loss so poignantly before being here. So about 10 months after I arrived here, and I was just at the point of feeling like, we got this, things are fixed. We got bookings coming in and we have wonderful guests and they're all excited and happy and finally we are over those hurdles. And then I lost my mother and my dear, dear friend on the same day. And I realized that I'm not very good at grieving. It takes a long time for me. I actually don't like to rush it, is what I also learned. Because there's so much beauty that gets revealed after someone leaves. You're kind of left with the residue of everything they meant to you, and that you didn't even know what they meant to you at the time. So losing two such very important people to me on the same day, not related in any way, that was quite a shock. I'd say I probably got through that, and then a year later, just over a year later, I lost a dear friend to suicide. So that was last fall. And then just 2 weeks ago, I lost my uncle. My uncle lived here in Fiji. He came in 1972, and we were very close. And he really influenced me in so many ways because he's an entrepreneur, just a lover of life, totally out of the box, maverick, daredevil, adventurer, explorer. And he shared those attributes with me. He made me see that you could live life on your own terms in a most spectacular way. And that's such an incredible gift that he gave me. With the idea that we're all walking each other home, right? So these are several people in a fairly short period of time who were really critical in my life, especially my dear friend, my mother, my uncle. They truly shaped who I am. And they all believed in me. And now I carry their belief in me for myself. In a way, it's almost the essence of them has stayed with me. It's almost like the human qualities have been stripped away, and it's just this powerful wave of love that stays with me now. The energy of it, Guiomar, is almost overwhelming. It's almost difficult to fathom that we could be loved so much.
Mm.
So I do feel that they continue to walk me home, that they're with me in so many ways. And that's truly a miracle.
I think, Monica, just to acknowledge you for sharing on that level with us around the losses that you've experienced, and how in many ways that, you know, there's a learning for us there in how we are all in this together, how the experiences that we often want to shut out, the grief, the pain, the sorrow, the loss, are the ones that really do perhaps bring us closer to home, to finding ourselves connected and interconnected, and knowing that we aren't alone, that it's something that we all experience. So thank you for taking us there. And I'm going to, at this point, ask Corry and Isobel to rejoin the conversation and contribute and see what comes up across the group of us. Yeah. Welcome back, Corry. Welcome back, Isobel. Thank you for giving us this time to have the conversation. And Isobel, I can see you feeling a little emotional, clearly touched by what Monica had to say. And so I'd like to invite both of you back in to either acknowledge Monica or to ask any questions or share something that's coming up for you around this conversation.
That was very beautiful, Monica. You have no idea. Everything that you've said just resonated. I'm not usually an emotional person. This is very unusual for me. I think Guiomar knows me. But I have to say, you touched my heart. What you said was incredibly inspiring. I've made so many notes, so many pearls of wisdoms that came from you that were truly beautiful. Thank you for everything that you shared. And I think it's early in the morning. I need another cup of coffee. If you need somebody to help you make beds in your bed and breakfast or your guest house, I'll be there. And you are an inspiring lady. You really are.
Thank you so very much for your kindness and the beauty of your open heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Isobel. Thank you.
Yes, Monica, thank you so much for your openness and just this graceful vulnerability to just honestly share your wisdom and your story. It's really incredible what you've been sharing, and I also took a lot of notes. It's funny because like this year, for the first time, I chose a word of the year, and the word is belonging. So it's like I'm contemplating the same things and stories and experiences that you have shared here. I guess mostly inner experiences instead of like the physical thing. And I'm just wondering how do you navigate during the time of despair or doubts, and when you're there by yourself, like how do you navigate that and continue to choose what home is for yourself? Like you say that, you know, you have to be really clear with your intention and have this resoluteness of self. Like how does that actually look like? I'm not sure if you want to share anything.
Yeah, thank you, Corry. Yeah, I have felt very blessed. When our borders closed here, I ended up hanging out with a group of about 10 women. I didn't really know them beforehand. You know, there's maybe one woman in the group I knew, maybe two. And then we all found ourselves here together. And of course, like everyone else in the world, we thought we would be here for about 4 months. And then we'd be, on our way. And of course, that is not what has happened. Here we are still in this beautiful paradise. We are marooned in paradise for sure, but it is paradise in the sense that even thus far, we don't have any COVID on our island. So we've been able to truly enjoy each other's company. And that has made the time here that much more special. I think what has become clear is that we truly do need human connection. I even find that connection when I go into town and I see the shopkeepers that I know and just strike up those casual conversations. It's fascinating to me how meaningful those types of connections really are. That to just have a carefree nature to them and is just part and parcel of the minutes that go by in life. And then throughout the year, I've gotten together with people on Zoom, and how fantastic has this been to be able to get together with people from all over the world simply because you have a shared interest and there's no way that you would meet one another otherwise. And that's been wonderfully exciting. And then I actually started a curriculum, I guess you could call it a bit of a wisdom school, and I call it quantum surfing. And so I've shared those principles with people in master classes, and that's been another way to connect. So all those different ways, in addition to just hanging out with my 2 dogs and my cats and playing great music, And I think the other way I would respond to what you're asking for is that I try to be honest with my feelings. When it's just a bad day, it's a bad day. Like, it's okay. Just I try to really feel what's there rather than pushing myself to feel something else. To just be authentic. And if it takes a few days to get through a certain feeling, then that's okay. It's okay. So I always think in the back of my mind that maybe by giving uncomfortable feelings the attention that they're due, helps them to feel comfortable and then travel along rather than circling back later to try to get my attention then.
Monica, that's so beautiful, and Corry, I've no doubt that answers your question in a fantastic way. I know the journey that you've been on as well, and which is a very profound and deep journey as well, and that's beautiful, Monica. The idea of giving those feelings often that we don't want to, giving them the space, and the idea that otherwise they will come round again. And of course, feelings do come round again, and situations do come round again and revisit over and over. So the more we can allow them in, I guess the further and easier we can travel in the direction that we're wanting to go. And so, Monica, thank you for everything you've shared today. It's really been very, very profound and touching, and it's going to touch us and the other women. This will be shared at least with some other women who've, at least the ones who've taken part in these series of conversations. I will be sharing them further down the line. And Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge you to say I knew that you'd gone to Fiji. I don't know how I saw you on Facebook, but just once or twice over the last couple of years, you popped up on my Facebook feed, and I saw that you were creating there in Fiji. And of course, what we see on Facebook often and on the social media is the glamorous side. You may have posted on other elements, I don't know, because I haven't seen that. But that's what I saw. And I thought, wow, this is an incredible woman, which of course you are. But how wonderful to experience the real you in person, albeit via the internet, via this new medium of connectivity that we have. And thank you for being here today and rounding up so many of the questions that I think all of us here have, and many more have as well. And so with that, I'm also going to invite Corry and Isobel to give a closing remark or something that they might like to say, just holding the awareness of time as well.
Well, what you said at the beginning of the conversation, Guiomar, that an hour flies by, is absolutely true. Yeah, I would love to spend another hour or two chatting with both Corry and Monica. What I find interesting is, where is home? Because whereas Fiji is home for you at the moment, Monica, clearly as well, it is not your final destination, because you are obviously considering eventually, I don't know, going back to the US or leading a life of commute between the US and Fiji. And I feel the same way. Yeah, South Africa's home at the moment, but it's not my last destination. And home is where, yeah, we always say, where we have our friends, where we make connections, where we have beautiful things around, where we're happy. But it's not just one place. And you're absolutely right. It has resonated with me. And I just want to say thanks one more time for sharing such a profound part of your life with us today. It was moving. I think Guiomar needs to advise future participants to please have a box of tissues on their table as well. Yeah, just in the event that the participants lose it. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Isobel, thank you. And thank you for bringing that really spectacular heart that you have today to this conversation. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to thank Monica and Guiomar and Isobel for just being here, and I'm really honored to be in your presence. And Guiomar, for your beautiful questions and holding space for all of us. And Monica, obviously, the beautiful stories that you're sharing with us, and also just how much you are living your life and being so true to your experiences, and how willing you are to transcend your hardship and your pain and your grief in such a short amount of time. Like, I think you said that, you had a hard time dealing with grief, but I think so many people wouldn't even get to where you are, like, after years and years of losing their loved ones. So yeah, it's just incredible wisdom that you shared, and I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Monica, perhaps you'd like to give us some closing thoughts or words as well.
I also want to say what a pleasure and honor it is to gather with you and spend this time together, Isobel and Corry and Guiomar. Thank you for initiating this series and allowing us to be inspired by one another and to share from the heart. I think for me, all of that loss has really brought home for me how precious and fleeting life truly is. You know, it's a remarkable gift to live at all. And we can find ourselves filling our lives with trying to find meaning and purpose and belonging, anything else. And yet sometimes I think to myself, if I were on the other side and someone said, you get to go for one day, would you like to go for one day? I'd say, yes, absolutely. Give me the one day. I'll take it. It's such an incredible place that we live. And we can lose sight of that, you know? So I find that in gathering with other people like yourselves, I'm reminded how beautiful and precious and fleeting and gorgeous life really is. So thank you for the opportunity to share this last hour with you and to be reminded of that exquisite gift. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining today. And just to say, yeah, so these conversations at the moment, it's a short series. It might go longer because what I'm finding is that every day I'm meeting amazing women who are wanting to join in these conversations. And just to give you a little bit of an insight into that I found that most of the women I had that I could draw on are women that I've perhaps never met in person, that live elsewhere in the world, that now I'm realizing, of course, I need to connect with my country and the women who resonate in this space too, and those are appearing in a beautiful way as well. But so I'm really looking forward to where this is going to go. So really the conversations are part of the greater umbrella of the organization McKenna, which is planted in my heart at this point, not so much out there in the world yet, which means Queen of Africa. And yeah, so just thank you and goodbye, everyone.